Hello everyone and welcome to MR6P's Game Room. Today's video is going to be about, my gaming PC's evolution, the steps I took to get my PC to its fullest potential. This video is going to have a lot of information. Hopefully, will be informative enough to help the new gamers and new streamers turn their budget PC into well-oiled gaming and streaming PC. Uh, since this video is going to be pretty long, and I'm going to try to cover multiple points, I'm going to leave links in the description below, and the links will help you jump to specific points in a video to so you don't have to watch the whole thing if you don't want to go through the whole video over and over again. So I guess when you're just building a PC and you are on a budget, sometimes you can just build that super PC that everyone has, and just like me, you end up buying pieces, different parts of your computer here and there, reusing your old case, your power supply, and so on and so forth. Maybe the motherboard. So uh, I guess let's start with the quick history on what my computer used to have and what I've done to it and what changes I've had. I'm gonna talk about the overclocking, the blue screen that I was getting, what kind of video cards I have, and what I did with it. Pretty much, if you guys stick around, I'm going to give you a lot of information in this video. You could get all this information from other videos. People make little videos here and there, but you end up spending hours just researching. So hopefully, this will be one stop, all-in-one video for everyone to enjoy and use, and hopefully this will help somebody. So originally my computer was, well, still is, let's go to, I guess, my PC information really quick so I can show you. Oh, the heck. There we go. So as you can see, I have a i7 9700K CPU, which is 3.6 gigahertz originally, with 16 gigabytes of RAM. And my computer, I also initially had a NVIDIA GeForce GTX 9800 as my video card. Uh, Initially I built this computer just for gaming purposes, and it was good enough. I mean, I did feel that um, my games weren't running as smooth. Well, I shouldn't say games. The only game that I had problems with was Call of Duty Modern Warfare. There is a lot of people complaining that it's using a lot of CPU power and it's slowing down their system. They're not able to stream. Actually, I made a video, which it was a quick video, one of my first kind of tutorials that I made. It In there I had a quick fix for people that had issues with their CPU, and being with their CPU being used up to 100% with the by Call of Duty, sluggish PCs. I mean, the same thing was happening to me. Sometimes the game was very slow, very laggy. So, I started messing around with it, and started to messing around with my computer, started doing changes. Um, um, let's go back, and I'll tell you step by step the things I had and what I had to do to get my PC to where it is now. Again, it's not a super PC. It's not as good as some people that have complete world cooling systems, RTX video cards and like the top of the line CPUs. But I got this PC working to its fullest potential, and at this point, even though I would still like to have a secondary computer for streaming, but I'm really happy what I have. And if you guys follow this, hopefully you could get your PC to top shape too. So first off, let's talk about um, uh, what I did to make it a little faster and what problems I had. Initially, I figured my computer isn't fast enough, so I need to overclock it. So I went ahead and I installed MSI's Dragon software that allows you to update your drivers, your BIOS, and of course overclock from the within Windows. Overclocking was super easy. Updating the drivers was super easy. BIOS update was also super easy. But my computer started blue screening over and over. So after doing a bunch of research, I found out that people were complaining that after they overclocked their PC with that MSI Dragon software, their computer started blue screening. So I started to dig deeper into my computer, my settings, and I started checking my task manager, and I saw that MSI Dragon software was actually using a lot of my CPU. Up to like 15% of CPU was being used by different parts of that software. So what I did was I went ahead and I stopped the overclocking, went back to my default settings. I uninstalled the MSI Dragon and overclocked my PC through BIOS. Overclocking through BIOS was pretty simple. Honestly, when I first went in there, I knew what to do, but I wanted to double check my information I have. So I went online and I found quite a few people that have videos about overclocking. So my overclocking video will not go into details on what every setting does there, but I will show you that a few things that I had to do to overclock my PC to almost to its limits. Since I had to do the overclocking in BIOS, I couldn't use my OBS to record it, so I went ahead and I recorded it on my phone. Seems a tight bit blurry, but hopefully this will actually be enough for you guys to be able to overclock your CPU and your RAM to its fullest potential. Let me run the video really quick and you guys can listen to what I have to say there. BIOS settings and overclocking on my computer. So as you guys can see, my motherboard is MSI MPG Z390 Gaming Pro Carbon motherboard with the i7 9700K CPU, which is 3.6 gigahertz. And after overclocking, you guys are able to see right now that my CPU is actually running at 4.7 gigahertz, and also my RAM is overclocked to 3000 megahertz. Right now my CPU temperature is showing 45 Celsius. That's because looks like when I'm in BIOS my fans don't spin as fast as they should, but once I go into Windows, my fan speed kicks in properly, and my water cooling starts actually working better and cools down the CPU. Usually it's running at 38 Celsius, so there you go, you see it's actually coming back down to 38 Celsius. So really quickly, I want to show you the settings that I have for my overclocking settings. So in a book it says I should be able to overclock my CPU up to 5 gigahertz, but I never like pushing things all the way to their limit. 4.7 is already almost at the limit, but I figured I'll leave it at 4.7. So to overclock this, if we click on overclocking button here, it brings us to the overclocking menu. I am not going to go into great detail on what everything does in here. I'm sure you guys could find thousands of uh, YouTube videos where they go into details about every little settings, but I'll show you the things I have changed. And I did follow quite a few YouTubers and I got a lot of information from them, and I am also myself an IT guy, so combination of everyone's brains brought me back to these settings. And here we are. For first off, I have my OC Explorer mode in expert to be able to see more details. Then CPU ratio, I set it to 47. When you set the CPU ratio to 47, it actually adjusts your CPU frequency, which is the megahertz. So from 37 I went up to 47, and you guys can see my CPU speed went up to 4700 or 4.7 gigahertz. CPU ratio mode, I left it in dynamic mode. CPU ratio offset, I left it in auto. Ring ratio, this is important, I changed it to 44. Usually everyone says that it should be 2-3 points lower than your actual frequency. So instead of 47, I have it at 44. So the adjusted ring frequency now is 4400 megahertz. Then I left miscellaneous settings at enabled, and I changed my enhanced turbo to auto. CPU settings, mine was at 100, I left it at 100. CPU block settings, CPU base clock apply mode, I left it at auto. Then I turned on my RAM extreme memory profile XMP enabled. I turned that on, and that actually gave me a boost in my RAM speed. Double check, make sure your RAM is actually XMP compatible. Even if it isn't, you could still turn this on and see if you have any blue screens or any issues that you don't want to have. If you see you have issues, if your computer is blue screening or freezing, you can come back and turn off the XMP. In my case, I turned it on, so it boosted my RAM speed to 3000 megahertz. I had to go down to I had to turn on the CPU core voltage mode, override mode, turn that on. That was actually, I saw this in a couple of other technical videos on YouTube, so I decided to turn that on. I don't have much information on why it's done. Apparently it helps, it allows your overclocking to be more successful, if I say this correctly. Then there was something else I'm trying to remember I had to do. I think that was in CPU futures, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check this. Yes, in CPU futures I had to turn off the Intel C-State, and I turned on Intel Adaptive Thermal Monitor. That actually enables the CPU from it enables the protection and helps or stops CPU from overheating. And I think that's it. That was the only things that I had to change. And also Intel Speed Shift technology, I set it to auto. After all this, I did a bunch of tests on my machine, and so far I've been playing and streaming with these settings for past 2 months, and I had no blue screens, and my computer has been working at its top shape. Hopefully this CPU overclocking settings would help somebody to push their computer to their limits, or at least give their computer an extra juice to be able to stream and to also play games that require higher CPU power. Let's continue with the video. I'm going to go back to the Windows so I can actually start streaming in OBS or recording in OBS. Currently, I'm using my phone, so things might not be as great and as clear as if I do it in OBS. Hopefully that quick tutorial about the BIOS settings or overclocking in the BIOS helps somebody. I know I have a MSI motherboard, but that goes the same for all other motherboards. If your motherboard has overclocking capability, I would suggest you guys double check, make sure your CPU has overclocking capability, or of course make sure you have a decent cooling system. And actually, I'm gonna get to that overheating and cooling information right now. So um, as I said in the beginning, I have a budget. I had a budget PC, still kind of do. My case that I was using was over 10 years old. It was a case that I was keep on reusing from one computer to another computer to another computer. And when I built my new one, the case was too small and too old, and there was no cable management. And even though I have a water cooling system in there, and actually I want to show the water cooling system that I have on my computer currently. It's the Corsair liquid cooling system. Let's check this out. Actually, really pretty decent system. Um, um, Keeps my CPU very cool, and it's very quiet. So with this water cooling, um, my computer was still, acting kind of sluggish. And when I was changing the temperature of my CPU and my video cards and the motherboard, everything was running not not mid-range, but actually a little more hot than it should have. So I decided that it's time to upgrade my computer case, and I gotta say that was one of the great decisions I did, because that cooled down my system quite a bit. Not as cool as I want, but it was much cooler than my previous case. And actually, I want to show you guys the case I had purchased and I upgraded to. It is the Corsair uh, Carbide Series Air 540 high airflow ATX cube case. This case comes with in two pieces, the front piece and the back piece. In the back, you have the power supply stored and extra hard drives and all of the cabling. And in front, it's all empty. And I want to show you guys what actually looks like. uh let's see what the case looks like on the inside. Well, this is what it looks like when it's turned on. There's barely any cable showing. You guys can see my liquid cooling fans on the top and the extra fans that the case comes with on the side, and also a fan in the back. And of course, you guys can see my dual video cards, and I'll get into that little later. So I am very happy with this case and the airflow that it has and the lights and everything. The airflow helped a lot with my video cards also overheating. I could turn on the fans to their fullest and they will be really cool, but then it causes a lot of loud noise. So with a good airflow in my case, my fans and my video cards are set to automatic, and they only kick in when it gets really hot under high use, but they are running at pretty decent temperature. Let's see if I have another video I want to show you. I guess we'll get to that next. So uh, so the case helped with the overheating issue, but not much. I still noticed that my computer gets to the point where it slows down a lot. All of a sudden, the computer would slow down, like my system would just slow down, and once in a while, it would actually blue screen. Uh, so again, I started doing research and started checking the settings and the settings on my computer, the drivers, the BIOS settings, and I opened up my hard drive software, or the Samsung software, Samsung Magician to be exact. And I noticed that my hard drive under load was running at 67 Celsius. Under load 67 Celsius, that's a lot for the hard drive. And let me give you a little details on what hard drive I have. I have as my main C drive, or the main drive, is the Samsung 97 Pro SSD, the M2 NVMe interface. And up until that day, when I found out that my hard drive was running at 67 Celsius, I didn't know that these hard drives plugged in straight to the motherboard, the ones that are located next to the video card, they don't have any heatsink, they don't have any protection, and I didn't realize how hot they could get. So 67 Celsius was a lot, and my system was starting to throttle down to bring down the heat from the hard drive and not crash, and it would slow down my PC, and it would blue screen apparently. So I again started doing research, and I found out that currently MSI and other boards are actually making their own heatsink. But when I was doing this, I didn't have that option. My motherboard didn't come with the heatsink, so I found this online. EKW EKWB M the M.2 NVMe heatsink. It only costs $24. Fantastic heatsink, in my opinion. It worked beautifully. Your if you can see, this heatsink has the top layer and the bottom layer, so your hard drive actually gets put in between. It gets squished in between the heatsink, or sandwiched, and then it gets plugged in to your motherboard. And after I did that, I noticed that my temperature dropped from 67 degrees down to 51 degrees without uh, down to 51 degrees under high use. So you guys can see a picture I took. This is when I'm actually playing. When I was playing games, I had it at 51 Celsius, and without the games at the normal load, it was running at 42 Celsius. But let me show you one more picture in here. If you guys can see, my secondary CPU, my secondary SSD, which was not on board, was running at 25 Celsius. So naturally, I wanted to bring down the temperature of my onboard SSD to even lower temperatures. So what I call I MacGyvered it. That's what I like to do. I went ahead and I MacGyvered a small fan to my heatsink, and I want to show the fan I actually got. It's a Raspberry Pi LED fan. It's a tiny LED fan that I was able to actually attach to that heatsink. And after I attached that fan to my heatsink, my computer started running, or my hard drive's temperature went down to 32 Celsius without a load. An under load, it actually runs at 42 Celsius now, which is a great improvement. Instead of being 67 Celsius, 67 Celsius underload, right now it's running at 42 Celsius underload and 32 Celsius just without a load, just normal Windows running. And I want to show you guys what it actually looks like in my PC. Some might say it looks cheesy, but this is what currently my motherboard looks like in my case, and that's the heatsink that I have, and that little fan that I have that hooked up on top of it. The fan blows the air through those little notches that the heatsink has, and it actually cools it down even more. So hopefully, this little trick that I did to my SSD drive will help someone. If you haven't checked your SSD hard drive temperature, go ahead and install Samsung Magician on your PC, and you should be able to get a lot more information about your hard drive temperature. It does Your hard drive doesn't have to be Samsung. It will show temperature for any of the hard drives that are plugged in your system, which is a great tool to have. So now that we talked about all of the issues that my computer had, the overheating issues that my computer had, and now that we fixed all of those issues, changing the case and actually adding the heatsink with a little fan on top of my SSD drive, my computer is running top notch, overclocked, no blue screens, no slowdowns. um, I'm able to play pretty much every game I want to play. At this point I still have we're going to say at this point I still have my NVIDIA GTX 9800 graphic card, and my computer runs fine when I play any other game, Company of Heroes, Red Alert, a few other games. But when I start running Call of Duty Modern Warfare, I notice that my computer starts to lag, and it starts to lag a lot. You move the mouse left or right and barely follows it. I check the task manager, and my game is running at 75%, like it's using the 75% of my CPU just for the game. On top of that, a few other things are running on the computer, the internal core components of your Windows, and this computer is being used up at 100%, and that causes the game to lag. Apparently, Call of Duty uses your CPU for all of the rendering purposes. I mean, it does use your GPU, and it uses about 15% of the GPU, but mostly uses your CPU for rendering purposes. And when your CPU hits 100%, the game starts to lag. When there's a lot of action, you try to turn around or aim at somebody, and your mouse barely moves, which ruins your whole gaming experience. So naturally I started doing a lot of research online, and there is a ton of videos you guys can find on YouTube. A lot of people suggesting different fixes. Some of those fixes are ridiculous, some of those fixes make sense when you actually listen to them, but when you actually try them out, they don't work. I'm pretty sure you guys are here looking at this video because you probably still couldn't find your settings for your or you couldn't find a fix for this issue that we're currently having. um, so let me open up my Call of Duty so I can show you guys the settings I found that work beautifully for me. I actually made a video about this earlier, went over the settings before, but at that time I was only let's get back to that later. So let's open up the game, and actually let me show the settings I had. And actually I still have the same, pretty much same settings at this point, except I have a different video card I'm using. Let the game start up really quick. Make sure my recording is still going. Yes, it is. Alright, let's go to options. Let's go to graphics. So first off, display mode, full screen borderless. If you're streaming, you're gonna have to use this setting because you'll be able to actually alt tab out of the game without minimizing the game to do whatever you need to do on your secondary monitor. Display monitor, I have set my it takes my main display monitor. Display adapter, currently I have GTX 1660, but I used to have 9800, and all of my settings are almost the same between two of my video cards. We'll get to render resolution soon. This is the important setting I'm going to talk about, but let's go back, let's go down to all of my other settings that I have in here. Aspect ratio automatic, sync every frame disabled. I'm actually using G-Sync right now. We will get to that also later in the video. Fantastic feature. Custom frame limits. I have my game custom frame limits at 144, menu frames at 60, and you guys actually can see it in the top corner there. It shows 63 frames. And then autofocus custom frame limit, I have it at 141. Could have been 144, but I left it at 141. NVIDIA highlights, a lot of people say turn them off because they slow down your system and this and that. I didn't see any difference with this on and off, so I kept it on because I like how my video card actually makes snapshots of my games. That if there's something cool that happens in a game, it takes a quick highlight of that portion of the game, which is pretty cool. I can use that in my streams. Display gamma, I have it at 2.2. I didn't change that. Texture resolution, I have it at high. Texture filter, I have it at high. Particle quality, I have it at high. Bullet impacts and spray, I have it enabled. But a lot of people say you should turn all those off. That didn't help much with anything, so I have them all at high. And I have them high because of something else. I'll get to that in the end. So particle quality high, bullet impact sprays enabled, tessellation near, shadow map resolution at high, cache spot shadows enabled, cache sun shadows enabled, particle lightning at high, direct ray tracing disabled. I had it disabled on my GTX 9800 because it didn't actually take effect. 9800 can't support this, and my GTX 1660 actually supports direct ray tracing, but I noticed when I turn it on it actually drops my frames per second, so I have it off. Ambient occlusion, I have it both. Screen space reflection, it's at normal. Anti-aliasing, I have it at filmic. With 9800 I had it turned off because I noticed that was slowing down my system. 9800 wasn't able to take care of all of the anti-aliasing that this game requires, so I had it off. Depth of field, I have it enabled. Filmic strength 1. World motion blur, I have it disabled. Weapon motion blur disabled, and film grain at 0.25. Now the most important setting that helped me with my CPU use, render resolution. In here you can see it says that it helps with performance if you bring that down, but if you bring it up it will improve the image quality. I'll be honest, I did not see much of a difference in my image quality, especially when you have all of these settings set to high. You don't see any difference. At least I did not see much of a difference. But what I saw was my CPU dropped from uh, 75% down to 28%, and if I actually get out of these settings right now, it will go up a little bit. Let's go to the multiplayer menu. It actually jumps up to 52, but it does not jump to 75 and stay there constantly. You guys will notice right now we're at 62%, and my CPU is almost 100%, but I promise it helps a lot. Let's go into actual game right now. Let's start a quick play and look at the settings. It's loading right now. We will see that we're hovering in a 60% CPU, and I am at 100% right now because my Streamlabs is also running and it's using another 20% of my CPU, and this is another thing that I'm going to talk about. But once the game actually starts, you guys will notice that my CPU will drop a little bit, the CPU used by the game will drop a little bit, and the game itself is so much smoother. Uh, Look at that. We're dropping now. Let me select my loadout. Let me show you this. I mean,
We've got enemy inbound.
no lag at all. I can run around easily. And look at my frames per second right now. I'm at 110, 100, and it's pretty decent. And by the way, I am streaming right now, so my frames per second are a little lower than if I wasn't streaming. But look, 125, 120. So let's look at the CPU use. My CPU game is using, look at that, right now we're actually at 74%. Again, earlier I said it will drop, and it does drop depending on the games I play, depending which games I'm going into. But that lag that my game had is gone completely. I mean, it was unbearable with the 98. Right now I'm using 1660, but with 9800 it was so laggy. And right, I'm not playing, of course, so they keep on getting advantage of me and killing me. But the game was so laggy. Even with the 1660, the game was very laggy. Let's get out of the game right now really quick. So let's go back to I want to talk about this a little bit more before we move forward. So the game lag completely disappeared with 9800 just by bringing down the rendering. But when I actually started streaming, I noticed that my computer was still lagging and my frames were, dropping a lot in a game. So what I did was I went ahead and I upgraded my computer. I added another video card, my GTX 1660. That's what I could afford. I couldn't afford buying, an RTX video card at that point. So I want to go into details now of my OBS settings and what I had to do to set them up with having two video cards, and make the actual stream run smoother, and make my streaming not affect the frames per second that my game is actually I'm getting the frame. Oh my goodness. And I want to show you what I had to do to stop my streaming affecting my FPS in a game. Hopefully that was not as confusing as it seems to me. So OBS settings. Let me put my OBS here on this screen. We're gonna have this weird effect happening, but that should be okay. Let's go to my OBS settings. You guys can see it's recording right now. We're gonna go to general, Ah, I'm already in general settings. I'm getting confused. Let's go to stream. We can't see my stream settings, but I want to actually go to my output settings, and here we go. So in my output settings, I'm using the hardware NVEC encoder. This uses your NVIDIA video cards NVEC chip, which actually takes away or helps your system or your OBS to to take advantage of that rendering chip, and it uses your NVIDIA rendering chip, the NVEC chip, instead of using your CPU for rendering, which also helps bring down the CPU usage. So we have that. I have my rate control at CBR, bitrate 6000, keyframe at 2, profile high, GPU. GPU, it used to be 0. 0 means use your main GPU if you only have one GPU in your computer. But since I have installed 1660 and I did not remove my 9800, I am using 1660 dedicated just for the game, and I'm using my 9800 for my rendering for my OBS. To do that, I selected one. One is number one, is my secondary PCI slot on my motherboard. So the main slot is 0, and the secondary one comes up as 1 in the OBS. So selecting this allows OBS to use my secondary video card or my 9800 GTX as my rendering device, while my game is using 1660 for rendering my games. Excuse me. So why I'm talking about this is because there are a few people that say, oh, there is no point on using two video cards for rendering because it doesn't make much difference. But what I noticed was when I used only 1660 as my gaming and as my streaming video card, my FPS dropped by about 10 points. Um, I don't see much of a speed difference in the computer itself when I use these settings. I don't see difference in my CPU usage, but I see my frames per second uh, drop eliminated when I use my second video card as my OBS rendering device. Hopefully this makes sense. When let me go to my actual task manager really quick, and in my task manager, if I go to my performance, you guys can see my GTX 1660 Super video encoder is not being used, nothing is being used, only my 3D settings are being used. That's just normal. And the GPU is second GPU or GPU1 GTX 9800 is actually using 24% of my encoder power to encode my current stream that I'm actually recording, or my recording. When I deselect, all right, when I change back to GPU 0, this goes away and it actually comes here. And during my gaming, it's using my 3D power, it's using the copy, it's using the video decode, and it's using video encode. Pretty much all four of these little squares are being used. And I noticed that my frames per second or FPS in a game drops a lot, or at least by 10 points, which is a lot if you're trying to gain any advantage as you can out of your gameplay. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about the OBS settings and how to use your secondary card. And actually, this we're getting to the point of the video where I wanted to talk about getting all out of your computer, your budget computer. You know, yes, it's not really a budget computer anymore, but it also could have been much, much more expensive if I had a better video card, like an RTX video card, and I had a better CPU. So I kind of went at the lower, you know, I tried to spend less than some other people could, and try to get the best out of what I have. And the best settings that I could come up with was this, having two video cards, one for gaming, one for the actual OBS itself, without actually having the secondary computer for streaming. That would be, the best setup, the best, highest. Best streamers use two computers, one for gaming, one for streaming. But if you cannot, then you're gonna have to settle with two video cards. And this setup, I believe, is the best setup that I could come up with to get the best out of my computer. I said a bunch of bests just now. So let's close these settings. Now you guys know that I have two video cards, and I use one for gaming, one for streaming, and this is how you set it up. And again, people say one video card should be enough. I think two video cards are needed if you want to get high FPS out of your games. Let me move this aside, and let's talk about, let me see really quick. Oh, let's talk about the FPS a little bit more. And the last addition that I added to my computer about a month ago, that it helped my gaming experience, the actual quality of the game itself, the gaming experience, and the getting the highest frames per second, was my monitor. Not everyone talks about the monitor when they talk about their gaming computer setup. But the monitor, let's see, here we go. Asus VG27 278 or 2078 QR 27-inch gaming monitor, 1080p, Full HD, 165 Hertz refresh rate, with a G-Sync compatible, and a bunch of goodies, eye care, and all so on and so forth. But it has G-Sync, which is important, which helps a lot with your FPS. Okay, and one more important thing that probably not a lot of people know until they actually read all of the directions that come with the monitor itself. If you guys want to get the full advantage of your monitor, doesn't have to be even Asus, any monitor, you have to use the DisplayPort cable. Don't use the HDMI or DVI, use the DisplayPort cable. The second you turn on your DisplayPort cable, all of a sudden magically the G-Sync capability will appear on your computer. Your NVIDIA video card will allow you to turn on the G-Sync settings, and with the G-Sync settings turned on, you could get to the highest possible frames per second, or FPS on your computer. And you will notice that you get a lot of extra settings available all of a sudden on your NVIDIA card properties, and you'll be able to set up the refresh rate. It's fantastic. Okay, currently my refresh rate is set at 144 megahertz. I could go up to 165 megahertz, but like I said earlier, I don't like pushing the limits of all of the hardware on my computer, so 144 is more than enough. You guys earlier saw the FPS I was getting in Call of Duty with my current video card 1660. I want to actually open up a quick video that I made earlier again, to show the frames per second that I was getting with my current setup. And this is a quick video I made to see my frames per second. Right now I'm getting about 120 130 frames per second, and this is Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So that was Call of Duty Modern Warfare, 120 125 frames per second I'm getting out of my current setup, where my video card right now is GTX 1660. My computer is actually recording and streaming, or it's recording, it could be streaming, doesn't matter, with my OBS setup using my other my secondary video card, so it doesn't take away from my FPS. Again, when I start using just one video card for streaming and playing, my frames per second drop even with the G-Sync turned on. I want to show you Fortnite settings, 130 frames per second, 130, 135, 140. Look at this. CPU hard drive temperature is now 36 instead of 61 or 67. CPU temperature is currently 50 Celsius. Overclocked from 3.6 to 4.7. Game is taking 72% of CPU. But yeah, the frames and everything is fantastic, and temperatures are great too. So yeah, that said, with my current setup, the computer is running just fine. I am able to stream, I'm able to record, I'm able to play all at the same time. Those little few fixes that I did in the beginning by changing my computer case and adding that the heatsink on my SSD drive helped tremendously. So in conclusion, I really hope that this video helps somebody. If you're struggling with your overheating issues, maybe a few of the things you hear in this video will help you with your overheating issues. And if you are having issues with your Call of Duty Modern Warfare, hopefully this video will also help you fix the lag and the CPU and all the issues that you're currently having with your game. And also, if you are a streamer, hopefully this video will help you with your actual stream. And if you guys did enjoy this video, if you like this video, please go ahead and hit the like button. And of course, if you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel. And if you do subscribe, you'll be notified when I stream or when I upload new videos. And hopefully you'll join me for my next stream. For now, thank you guys and have a good day. Bye bye.